And New York, where the gunman accused of killing 10 people at a grocery store in Buffalo has appeared in court. 18-year-old Peyton Gendron has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder. It's the second mass shooting in New York State in the past few weeks. Now, officers are describing the crime as racially motivated violent extremism. From New York, Faith Orr reports.
A mass shooting on a sunny Saturday afternoon. This neighbourhood store was deliberately targeted because of the number of black people who live here.
The evidence that we have uncovered so far makes no mistake that this is an absolute racist hate crime. It will be prosecuted as a hate crime. This is someone who has hate in their heart, soul, and mind, and there is no mistake that that's the direction that this is going in.
This individual came here with the expressed purpose of taking as many black lives as he possibly could. So the Buffalo police saved a lot of lives yesterday. I want to thank them for that.
Peyton Gendron allegedly drove 3.5 hours, put on tactical gear, and used an assault weapon to kill 10 people and wound 3 others. Security guard Aaron Salter, who was also a retired police officer, took on the suspect, but his bullets made little impact on the protective gear. Salter is now among the dead and will be remembered as a hero.
One of the individuals inside the store is the security guard, a beloved security guard, who is a retired Buffalo police officer, a hero in our eyes, engaged the suspect, fired multiple shots, struck the suspect, but because he had heavily armored plating on, that bullet had no round. The suspect engaged our retired officer, and he was ultimately shot and deceased at the scene.
People in Buffalo are in shock after the shooting. Mourners have gathered outside the market to pay their respects to the victims.
It's a matter of it's just unbelievable. Unbelievable. It's hard to even muster. It's unbelievable. I'm lost of words.
It's just too much. I just can't. I'm trying to bear with it. It's just too much. You can't even go to the damn store in peace. It's so crazy.
The weapon used was bought legally in New York State, but the ammunition was not. And it was the high-capacity magazine that made the shooting so deadly. New York's governor said it may have come across the border from Pennsylvania. The suspect live-streamed the shooting and had posted a 180-page manifesto online, allegedly promoting hate speech. Kathy Hochul described Gendron as a white supremacist. She's pledged to crack down on those spreading extremism.
Anyone else who dare break the security that every citizen is entitled to make them feel victimized, you've just picked a fight with 20 million New Yorkers, because we will continue to stand up, because an attack on one is an attack on all. And this was no other way to describe it than white supremacy terrorism. It's racism, it's hatred, and it stops right here in Buffalo. This is the last stop you're going to have, because we are coming after you.
Gendron had been receiving mental health treatment after threatening a shooting at his high school last year. He was still being monitored ahead of the attack.
State police and FBI are at his house. They've spoken with the parents. From what I've been told, they're absolutely distraught and devastated, cooperating, but as I said, the state police and FBI are handling that part of the investigation down in that part of the state.
Gendron is being held separately to other inmates after a judge ordered him to be remanded in custody. He's under suicide watch ahead of another court appearance on Thursday. Faith Orr, Arise News, New York.
I will now bring in Arise News International Correspondent Faith Orr, who is in New York. Faith, glad to have you join us this morning. What's the latest coming out of New York concerning that shooting incident?
So all of the victims have now been named. We know that 4 of the people who were killed were actually employees at the store. That does include Aaron Salter, the security guard that I mentioned there in my report. He had worked at the store for a number of years following his retirement from the Buffalo Police Department. And he did take on the killer, the shooter, but inevitably he did pay with his life there because of the tactical gear that the suspect was wearing. Now, 13 people were shot in total. 11 of them were black and only 2 of them were white. 2 people do remain in hospital. They're in a stable condition, and a third person has been discharged. I'll just run through a couple of the other victims. So we know that Ruth Whitfield was killed in the shooting. She was the mother of Buffalo's retired fire commissioner. She was 86 years old. She had actually just been to visit her husband in a care home, and she just stopped at the store on her way back home to pick up a few items. Now, Pearlie Young, who was 77, she was another victim. She was a mother, a grandmother, and a missionary. She, for the past 25 years, had fed people in Central Park every single Saturday. Now, the youngest person to die, she was just 32, Roberta Drury, and she had actually moved to Buffalo to care for family.
Well, it's really important, Faith, to name these victims and tell their life stories, and so they do not just end up as statistics. Now, in your report, you mentioned that the suspect had an online manifesto and live streamed the event. What more can you tell us about that?
So we know that this was a hate crime based on race. Peyton Gendron is white, he's 18 years old, and he lives in Conklin. Now that is an area that is 89% white. It's around 200 miles from Buffalo. So he did have to travel quite a bit to actually carry out this shooting. Now, he allegedly posted a 180-page manifesto online that advocated for hate speech and apparently confessed to the attack. Now, within this manifesto, there was his perception of the dwindling white population and the erasure of white culture. The author of the manifesto describes himself as a fascist, as a white supremacist, and as an anti-Semite. Now, it's been confirmed that the attack was live streamed on the platform Twitch. The site says that that user account has been suspended and that they are monitoring to ensure that other accounts don't rebroadcast the material. You know, as you're aware, Arise News has chosen not to show it. But New York Governor Kathy Hochul, she's angry about this. She is demanding that social media platforms take some responsibility and actually pull down this material the second it is posted, because in her words, it is simply spreading like wildfire.
It's horrible indeed. Well, this is the second mass shooting in New York State in the past few weeks. What action is being taken by the governor and other authorities?
So this has been the deadliest shooting in the US so far this year. There have been at least 198 mass shootings so far in 2022. That's according to the Gun Violence Archive, which defines a mass shooting as 4 or more people shot, not including the perpetrator. Now, this does come just weeks after an incident in Brooklyn where 10 people were shot on a subway and several others wounded when the suspect threw gas canisters. Nobody died there, though. Now, Governor Hochul has promised aggressive action. She says that the perpetrator of this latest shooting will spend the rest of his days behind bars. She says she's angry that she has seen, guns in the Brooklyn subway and now on the streets of Buffalo, and that it has to stop. She has been joined in that call by Buffalo's Mayor, Byron Brown, and he is saying that there needs to be action taken in Washington, that lawmakers need to take action on this. Now, we have actually heard from Washington. We've heard from New York Senator Chuck Schumer, and he is demanding action at a government level. So we're hearing lots and lots of calls to action. Schumer's was actually made virtually to a church congregation in Washington, because he says that while everyone, of course, at this time must try to heal, there must also be this focus on changes at the government level so that this doesn't happen again. And he says that the scourge of gun crime in America must be tackled. And finally, the weapons of war banned from the streets.
Can now see the true cost of gun violence in the US. And away from New York, talking about more mass shootings, there was also a mass shooting at a California church that left one person dead and several others injured. Now, this came barely 24 hours after the New York attack. What more do we know about that?
So we know that shooting took place at the Geneva Presbyterian Church during a lunch reception to honour a former pastor. Police do have the suspect in custody. He is believed to be an Asian man in his 60s and he doesn't live in the area. Now, as you said, one person died, 4 people were wounded. We know that all of the victims are adults. The suspect was detained at the scene after a group of people actually managed to tie his legs together. They used an extension cord to do that. They also confiscated at least 2 handguns from him. Now, police don't actually have a motive yet for why this person carried out this attack, but they are checking to see if he has any ties to the church. We know that at least 40 people were there when the shooting took place, and that those who were injured are all Asian and they're all aged between 66 and 92. We don't yet know the identity of the person who died.
All right, thank you so much, Faith Orr, for the update from that shooting incident in New York.